I'm pretty excited about this afternoon, and I hope it measures up to what my expectations are. We're going to hear from a variety of people this afternoon. Grant Lastiwka is going to lead us off talking about the future of forages from a producer's perspective, from those of us who are out on the ground trying to make it happen on farms and ranches. Bart Lardner's in the room. We're very fortunate to have Bart here, and he's coming from Saskatchewan. He's going to present the researchers' perspective, what they're seeing, what they're talking about, what they see going forward. And then after our break, we'll hear Ed Bork's going to come by, give us a quick update on what's going on at U of A, rangeland research work. And then Mark Redmond from Ardar is going to tell us, the kind of discussions and what they're hearing on the research side as a funder. And Mark's in the unusual place. They're in connection with the whole broad brush of agriculture. They're hearing from the bee guys and the potato guys and the sheep people and the whole range. So we're interested to hear the kind of conversations they're having and the forage fit when people are talking rotations or the future of their livestock enterprises, etc. So soil health and all of that. You know, the potato guys are excited about soil health. Well, they till and rip more than anybody, and yet they recognize that they've got some work to do to heal their soil, and so cover crops are of interest to them. So Mark will bring those kind of things and the kind of ideas that are working on it from the funders at Ardar on this landscape. So, and then we're going to finish off the afternoon with a producer panel. And Steve didn't make it today, so John Bland is going to step into Steve's shoes and on the producer panel, and we've got Alec Robertson and Eric Boot. So John is heavily involved in the hay industry and the cattle industry from Calgary east for about 50 miles there. He's got quite a footprint out there and quite an impact on that area in forage production and hay and all of that. So he comes, well placed to have comments. Eric Boot, of course, is in the hay industry, has been in the livestock industry, but he's a hay exporter, so he can bring that thing. And Alex ranches in the foothills southwest of Calgary, so he's got a long history of trying to make forages work in that environment. So what we hope to do at the end of the day is have a robust discussion around the whole room, from what you heard and what you think and what your questions are. So we're talking about the future of forages. So it's not going to be so much about facts as visions and opinions. So we hope that these speakers challenge some of our paradigms and give us some ideas about where we might be going with forages. Of course, in this room, forages are something that's near and dear to us and we'll rely on heavily. The rest of agriculture, maybe not so much. So the reason we're losing forage acres is people have other ideas of what to do with land bases. So hopefully we can come up with some ideas and some direction this afternoon that'll give us a vision going forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to good friend Grant Lastiwka. Grant's been in on a ton of conversations for the last several months, partly to do with off-calf, partly to do with selling forage, union forage seed, but he talks to a lot of people. And so we thought he was well placed to have a concept or a understanding of what producers are dealing with and their challenges and what they're looking for in forages and what they hope and want to do with forages and bring that kind of thing to the table. So Grant, over to you. And we'll have the boys at the room at the back watch the clock. They'll do a better job. I'll get distracted listening to you. So
if you can. Yeah, I wouldn't mind you kind of keeping me in line, please. Give me a 10-minute or half time and everything. I always appreciate that to stay in the game properly. And the idea of expert, it isn't. It's an applied student, and that probably fits the best in answering this. I can't help it. All the years working with Alberta agriculture, and I think how smart Ellen Hall was to hire me. So where's Ellen? He's not here. I can say that. Okay. But Ellen did hire me, so it's really funny. Oh, yes, it's a long road. I'm looking at it, taking the temperature of the industry, if you want to call it that, as I looked at it, and I thought to myself when Doug asked about this, well, the things that I'm thinking about, what I'm hearing people talk about, yes, and there's no doubt about, and that is the scary part where we're down to, what is it, 21 million hectares or something? From when we started at Finn, there was 32. So 32 to 21, big drop. So there's no doubt about this. And so we look at the forages side from a point of concern. Holy smokes. Did I do that? I'm good. Second, please. Okay. The thing about it too now is a shortfall. And of course, that's one of the challenges in the livestock industry, is that we don't have the amount of forages. And as I was paying pretty close to 10 cents a pound for my hay, and I know John would say that probably wasn't enough, Grant, but all said and done, I thought, I can't do this. So we sold a good portion of cows a little bit ago. The prices are high, and that's great from some standpoints. But then Ed said to me, you know, part of the high prices is we're not as competitive on the world scale. So that's something also we look at. I guess I'll maybe hold it because I'm hitting the bottom button by accident. Okay, the big thing there is a concern at the present has been the quantity, the quality, and the price risk. So for people producing forages, what are they going to get paid for it? They don't know. And as I was talking to one of my neighbors who's produces hay for the export market, and he said to me, you know, a young fellow actually, and he said, you know, I think this is the best year we've ever had. So that was this year, and that was in the fall. And all said and done, yes, is that the case? But fortunately, the weather was suitable and everything. But the point is, it's a big game as I look to the future, and these are all negatives, is I've got price risk if I'm producing a forage for sale and if I'm growing it to feed a cow. The grain prices, the land competition, it's almost put people against, pitting people against people. And as the aggressiveness gets in the industry, it just seems like others are even going to get more aggressive. And that's what we're seeing, I think, across the province with the grain prices coming up. And then as Sam Path was talking about yesterday about organic prices, and now oats is softened a bit. So that's one of the big growth things from the center, from the Mara area, is an organic crop. So it's a big thing in that community, but the point of the grain prices and other things, they've held up. And the land competition, this is something that really bugs the hell out of me, is watching how people have got their own backhoes now and they're busy with their quad tracks and tractors running around and making the landscape a cropland, taking the forage land and making it a cropland. So if we look to forages for the future, forage got taken out of production and the landscape got sculpted to become a future of cereals and oil seeds. The ruminant negativity has kind of come the other way now a bit. How many people bought a plant-based burger lately? Oh, Eric did. Did you enjoy it, Eric? Okay, everybody, don't throw pies at Eric. Anyway, the cattle cost price thing, and to me, this is a big problem, has been that the processors and retail share in the marketplace, and it's ridiculous to have the margins that were true of the processors over the last year, taking away the opportunity for the cattle industry, and what has been dismal and why so many herds disappeared. So as forages and the livestock side of it being on the landscape, that's a huge negative, because very simply, you have to be your own marketer of things if you can't manage that. So there's no profit in the forages that are there. The one doesn't even show on the bottom, but the big story about COP21, I think, Kim, if I got that right, don't know, but where methane emissions and cattle, livestock were brought together, and then a mistake was made, and a direct and indirect was compared against just direct of the transportation industry. And all of a sudden those beef cows were really bad, and it turned an industry on its head. And they've been fighting it ever since, this negativity. The only thing I'd say about it is now it seems there's some things I'll talk about from the positive side coming our way. There's no doubt, as I look at the biofuel policy and everything, we're looking at a real support of the monoculture, the cropping industry. So buoyed up by, be it wars around the world or biofuel policies, the government has literally had, don't have a forage policy. And the energy source, the solar policy, we're looking at landscape disappearing acres out of the picture, and could be forage acres or grain acres. And often it is not the environmental sensitive areas, because that would be too much problem. Why don't we take some good cropland and put a solar panel on it? Farm, be it 960 acres, Greg, at Sylvan Lake, you can drive by enjoying every morning, or 1,200 acres at High River. I guess you might, Alex, enjoy that. But anyway, crop insurance policy. As the chair of the West Central Forage Association said to me, Rod Nickel, he said, there's no need for mixed farming anymore. Why do you need a second forage base included with a grain base when you've got 1/3, and you only pay 1/3? So the federal and provincial governments and crop insurance policies have been such that and Ed mentioned this morning, concerns, the forage has been on the negative side of the policies. The crop insurance has had cover their butt policy to stay in the grain business and no need for this mixed agriculture. Now, is it the nitrogen fertilizer policy reduction a negative for forages or a positive? That's something that, to me, I thought I'll just leave it here. Then you start looking around. When you do, you see that you've got the other side coming a little positive. Rothamsted. Well, everybody that is in soils probably has heard of Rothamsted research. They were in the 1800s going, when they take a stand and start supporting a forage ground and other things, you're starting to see, okay, there's science behind this. And then on top of that, you've got people like Frank Mitchletter. And Frank, of course, speaking on the positives again from a scientific basis of forages, and taking that into a future that is notably getting an argument for them in the industry. So now we've had Rothamsted, we've got UC Davis, Frank Mitchletter, can't even say his last name right, but being a real advocate for the livestock industry. And now through the work of the University of Alberta, and I don't know if Ed's here, no, And Texas A&M were part of it, comparing many grazers landscapes across the province and finding the science behind grazing management being positive to the future for water infiltration and for carbon, and lo and behold, for photosynthesis. And that science is critical in the decision making of anybody, because you're looking at not biased, hopefully. However, you know, you never know, I guess. But in my mind, I think it's something that all the Forage and Applied Research Associations got started so many years ago, knew that there's maybe not science behind it, but there was a lot of positive knowledge behind it. If you want to call this positive, and these three were supposed to come up at once, but they didn't. The fact is that the cereal industry's got some problems. And so it gets to a point of time where you say, what do I do with my kochia? It's now resistant to 3 groups of herbicides. What does that tell me? I've got wild oats problems, the resistance. I've got cleavers now. And so there's that canary in the mine. And as crop disease goes, can we breed our way around the club root problem, the fusarium problem? And they've done a pretty good job of it at spots. But the weed side maybe is the one that's going to be the hardest on them. The grain market softening, and that's what some of the latest reports have been. It's not going to soften so much, but the agribusinesses have been pretty happy to make sure that grain farmers' margins have been kept tighter. So I'm being negative here against agribusiness. I apologize, guys. But all said and done, the margins in, you do need $14 canola, probably with the cost of fertilizer and other things. Nitrogen just dropped now, but the high costs. And as we saw, the oat market softened significantly. The thought of wheat kind of hanging in there, canola softening, and flax, of course, surplus. So there's a number of the grain crops that are coming back, and they kind of go around in a circle, and the war does help them. But when it comes down to it, so all of those things to me are pushing away and into the forage industry, away from the grain industry. And the realization that I think ecological goods and services are getting brought up again and again and again. And actually biodiversity maybe is even more important as we look at it. So we're looking at the future, and people, because of things that have come up like COVID, they've questioned the future. And now having some tools in place, biodiversity, ecological goods and services, just in case, because the future, nobody saw that coming with COVID and the fear that came about it, that caused people to, who lined up for toilet paper? Oh, Eric did. Anyway, he's joking. All said and done, the idea is it shows how people were thinking, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, clothing, shelter. And all of a sudden people started to go to local foods and saying, okay, do you have a beef? And I've got a friend that's, says, I've sold everything I've got. I don't even have them for the people that want them. And all said and done, again, is that positive? Other things that are exciting is where we're getting some more things, and Doug, I think, sent this my way, but we're looking at an industry that's taking responsibility for itself. And it takes responsibility for itself and aligns itself with that. All of a sudden, the companies and Jeff now with McDonald, is he with Cargill now? Jeff's with Cargill now. He's done a lot for people. I forgot his last name. Jeff Fitzpatrick, thank you. And it's surprising how these people can, now that Jeff's gone to Cargill from McDonald's, you've got 2 places at least that are pushing for, let's be responsible here. Let's buy verified beef. And you know what? And that was what sage advice from Ted Bilya. Doug fired my way. He thought he better help me out because he knows me too well. we don't have enough of a product. So that bodes itself well for a forage industry movement. Support in dollars for ecological goods and services, be it Ducks Unlimited, and saying cut your hay a little bit later and we'll work with you, and if you keep your potholes in there. And so maybe that does work best to be forage land, and we can have productive hay crops off there, and we don't have to put all the effort into draining things and making it a grain farm. Ellis and all the support, Nature Conservatory, as the Waldron Ranch, I think, has done a lot with those groups too. And Ellis has helped a lot of people in the keeping their forages more profitable, simply because they can do some things there that blend together pretty well. So positives for forages for the future, pushing it a bit towards. And then Forage for the Future, the Beef Cattle Research Council, 27% forage support in their funding. And Reynold Bergen many years ago said, you know, we realized we had to put money into forages when, I like this, one of the Queen's Award winners, Diane Westerlin, and Doug Ray sitting here, came into his office and bent his ear. And so, you know, it just takes a few intelligent words from some people that people respect, and they go, that's a good point. And so what can change things around? All of a sudden now there's 27% support for forages coming from a beef industry in terms of trying to build it and realizing the importance in it. The other one that was kind of exciting for me is once we've got a lot of things ironed out, the Canadian Forage and Grassland Association is getting the recognition it deserves, and way to go, Eric, for all the efforts they've done at higher levels. And it's because they've been fanatically working on this, and to the point of, you know, I don't know how Cedric could manage the levels of work he did at half salary, but it's one of those things. We're very fortunate that Afin's parent group, the CFGA, and Erica and Afin are kind of considered in this together under that group. And fortunately, all the good work Eric's doing, and prior to him out of Ontario and others, this realization that forages is a force and forages is important. And I'll show you a little more about that. Excitement. Well, as water drops around the world, Ed keeps telling us, you know, if they fly over that dam, I don't even kind of think of the dam as you're going south towards California, but no water in it means that you're in trouble. And I guess you guys in Arizona aren't going to get any. The export demand for forages to many countries around the world, because Canada's got a tremendous water resource and the opportunity to grow forages with water, because other countries can't, and they don't have the water to do it. So in my own mind, it comes back around where in fact we're seeing some of this through the Science and Living Labs and all the work Kimberly's doing and other groups as well. All of a sudden it's coming back to, we've got people in our corner that are talking about soils, they're talking about forages, and they're talking about we need deep soil samples, not 6 inches, and building models based on 6-inch soil samples, which in many cases are certainly helping us understand more about the cropping industry, but are we understanding more about a deeper rooted forage industry? The beef cattle cycle, that's another thing. We're coming around on that. The US drought has caused some issues. Certainly the opportunity for some of the prices that were paid lately in the last couple of weeks. One of my neighbor friends that I used to know quite well sold first calf pairs, and for $4,700 to $5,200, I got a cow calf pair, heifers, in at a Charlet sale. But the point of that was it made it into Manitoba with that discussion. So somebody called me from Manitoba and they said, did you know he got this for that? So the beef cattle cycle, is it coming around where it's going to be paying its way for forage land, in fact, to be considered differently? And some of the other things, so some of these are coming together. In my own mind, I know that some of the positives is we got a lot of young minds coming in the system, and Bart is one of those that tends to be feeding those young minds, so we'll be counting on him shortly. And Courtney was one of his students, so we've got a Sharpie on our board, thanks to Bart, or is it just Courtney we need to thank? All said and done, these young people coming into the industry, and Amber's been spoiling us rotten on the board. And so you're looking around, and I'm missing people, I apologize. I know that we got young people like Laura in the game too. And we just think the world of these people and want to stay in ag. The reality is that they're starting to look at it from challenges in the oil and gas industry being a negative for that. But all of a sudden the college has got a lot of ag kids. And so where are they going to be working, in agribusiness or such? How many of them are going to be looking more towards the forage side in varying ways? Maybe it's to education and masters and PhDs. Maybe it's in fact simply to, as they're involved, being some of those resources that are going to add to it. The livestock or direct to consumer growth and pricing, that's another way where you can price your way to profitability, hopefully. And for many people, like a friend of mine, the one guy said, well, I don't want to pay that for the, your finished animal. And he said to them, well, sorry, others will. So, and he sold in the end, he sold all of his fats that he had locally or through systems to people. And in so doing, didn't have to come down in price. And so some of that is Nora shared with her daughter, Jolene, some of the work they've been doing. So we're looking at an industry that requires forages. And with the possibility, and this is where I'm seeing other things coming about, this is where I bring up the AMP again. I'm bringing it up, adaptive multi-paddock grazing, coined by Richard Teague out of Texas A&M. And that was the basis of the study that went across Canada, looking at these grazers like a John Reed, and why is he getting the results he is? Let's have a look at it. Let's put the science behind it. And with that, so doing, opened a door. This is one, when I start looking at you're thinking about things that affect different parties. And it did my heart good when I saw Guardian of the Grasslands, if you ever saw that video. And of course, who's the guardian? It's a cow. And when Doug's daughter-in-law and her brother-in-law put that together, what a small world we've got here, amazing people. But the point was, it was a poignant story, and everybody thought it's a resource we're losing. Let's look at it as a reality. We're losing rainforests in Brazil, and we're complaining about him here, but we're losing grasslands, as you just heard when I said 32 million to 21, and we're not saying a thing. And everybody started to think, well, hold on. And so very exciting to me, because you're getting at people from another angle. All of a sudden, emotion is huge. The other thing at the Soil Health Conference in Edmonton, Western Canadian Conference on, I say Canadian, but it's supposed to be Canada, Western Canada Conference on Soil Health and Grazing, that Laura chaired and ran like a top fiddle. And actually Nora was hired to work with her. So what an amazing team. Stuart Chutter got up and spoke. And you know what he said? We've looked at crop insurance. We've looked at the landscape here. We're certainly looking and seeing that our low soil organic matter landscape is where the majority of our money we're paying out people is going. So you're looking at a situation where information can be power. And so why are we planting crops on marginal lands to that extent that are riskier, and we have to pay out more? Maybe would a premium for higher risk affect why some of this land doesn't get put into crops that are annual, into perennial forages or such? How much time do I have left? Oh, David, you're 15 minutes. 14, okay. The regenerative agriculture, and this has been led by the Forage and Applied Research Associations here in Alberta. I feel for Bart because he doesn't have them there in Saskatchewan. So he's got to do it all on his own. And but that movement, that grassroots movement of so many producers and others, and we got to watch because yes, I think it started quite a while ago, maybe with Ian Murray saying, you know, I don't want to be just sustainable. And I remember that comment at one of the planning meetings that Laura was at, I know. And so what's more than sustainable? Going beyond sustainable. Well, I know other people call regenerative maybe theirs, but in my own mind, I think it came a lot from the grassroots. The big thing now that kind of started to help me too as I looked, and I thought, off-calf, of course, On-Farm Climate Action Fund. I'm getting so good at these acronyms now. I never even knew what RDAR was for the longest time. I just say RDAR. And results-driven agriculture research, because of working on all these applications, I can just spout them off right, left, and center, and nobody understands me, but I understand myself at least. And so it is a fund, a emission offset fund that the federal government decided they would allocate towards agriculture. And it's something that I know we had tried to say, you know, agriculture's photosynthesis. Carbon is life. And I know the Union Forage, Graham Finn, I work for, and Graham said, you know, I was on a panel, and I think Tim was on the same one. And somebody at the panel said, I'm going to rid the world of carbon. Oh boy. Okay, so you're gone, I guess. Ridding the world of life. The photosynthesis being the carbon, the basis that converts through photosynthetic process and moisture into being carbohydrates and foodstuffs. But lo and behold, off-calf funding for farmers. And I think this is going to, I'll share a little bit of something because in my own mind, this is a story that's kind of excited me. And that's why, I don't know why things are coming up that way. All of a sudden it's at the top. Origin. People have said to me, and I was at one other conference, and they said, I'm so concerned about this government program. You know, what are they trying to do with it? It came from producers. Do people not realize that? And this is where I get excited. Like I shared to you about Doug and Diane Westerland, Doug Ray, and the impact they had on the Beef Cattle Research Council. Well, imagine if somebody listened to you and had money as they listened to you. So the federal government actually brought this forward, and it came from Farmers for Climate Solutions. So a group of people got together, and I don't think you can see this well enough, but when it came down to budget recommendations, they thought, if you want to spend money to the federal government and you're doing this with carbon, you know what, why don't we tell you where you can spend money? Because we're from agriculture, and we're going to get together and give a farmer-led task force of experts. So farmer-led task force of experts to propose short-term actions, deliver long-term lasting benefits. So that was what they put together. This is part of their campaign when they started. And that was the body that carried it out. And there's your Canadian Forage and Grassland Association. Farmers for Climate Solutions members, they were there. And Eric and the team there, I think it was before Eric's time even, but all said and done, Cedric McLeod and the team, but you got people like Holistic Management, National Farmers Union, Organic Alberta, and others, Rural Roots for Climate Solutions, getting together and giving feedback. Oh, should have done that sooner. Giving feedback, in fact, and here's some of the things they put together for the federal government to look at. And they said, here's some things you can look at. So that's what they put forward as a budget resolution. Doesn't something look familiar here? Increased adoption of cover crops, normalized rotational grazing, doing more with less nitrogen. Unfortunately, I don't know if they want to say some things there because, of course, concerns people have about losing nitrogen. But the ideas they put forward went forward from there. And here is the budget from 21. Going to ruin that one. The budget, this is the statement in the budget, page 174, chapter 5 of the federal budget in 2021. Provide an additional 200 million, launch immediate on-farm action. And I know Greg would say that wasn't very immediate, was it, Greg? No, 2 years later, eh? Immediate for the feds. That targets accelerated emissions reductions by improving nitrogen management, and that's the way I'd look at it too. Increasing adoption of cover cropping, normalizing rotational grazing. They were shocked that they actually took their ideas and put it into policy, put it into dollars, got it out back to producers. And when you look at all of this, I guess when I look at Forages, and I'm proud to say I'm a member of the National Farmers Union, have been for a long time. I always think you need some good competition and somebody that's going to question things. If you don't have that, you never rise to the top. And the idea about it is that, you know, how do we deal with this farm crisis and climate crisis? And that's where we're seeing Darren Qualman does some great work there. But I'm looking at it from the Forages side. And as I look at it from the Forages side, I see us being the solution. And as I see that being a solution, if I want to see something positive, that's what I'm going to end my talk on, because that's a statement I stole out of there and didn't use fully, but just in part. I know that when the zero-till movement started, it was 97-cent barley. And that doesn't pay many bills. So, but there was also new technology. I wanted to get my Borgo air seeder and other things. So you're looking at a combination of things. When BSE hit, all the work everybody did looking at, and all the work Erica led on year-round grazing, all of a sudden change adoption that moved everything to another level. I'll leave it with this. Is this the time that Forages are going to be recognized for the complexity they have and the fact of how they're intertwined? And as Jen was saying this morning about the leafcutter bee industry and Weldon, I just thought that's the whole story too. That in fact, we start looking at Forages and realize they jump up everywhere. They're affecting the canola industry. They're affecting a lot of things more broadly than we think. And that was the biggest problem when a fin got started, was how do you effectively address and help all these parties? It sure helps if the government gives us and shared more money to the groups that are doing grassroots work and supports them more fully. I'm hoping this is a time of change, but I started this very negatively and I thought, what am I going to say? And maybe now I'm not as negative.
Thanks, Grant. And just to note, Grant finished slightly ahead of time.